And this morning we're talking to Beytagh from the LKB Agency. They specialise in communications, engagement and events. How important is storytelling to your business and clients?
It's really important. We have a lot of clients that have really kind of contentious issues that they often have to deal with. We also have clients that have quite complex information that they need to communicate. They often have quite data-rich information that they need to communicate. So storytelling is critical because it brings in that human factor.
Every story has a setup, a challenge and a resolution. What are the key components for bringing a great story to life in strategic communications?
It's very much about telling that big picture story and keeping really focused on what the end result is for a client. So some of the key components that we'll look at when we're bringing a story to life are things like who is the audience, why are we telling this story? Will be things like simplicity and clarity. We want to make sure that every story is compelling and interesting. You've got to be interesting. And we certainly have what we like to call our calm communication formula, which is where we really take a much more planned and strategic approach to storytelling, because we really want to get that long-term result for clients, but make sure that every time they tell a story, it's calm, it's compelling, it has clarity, and it'll keep the audience engaged for a longer period of time.
What's an indicator to you that someone needs help with their strategic communications and maybe when you're going to put the calm communications in place?
They might be facing a particular problem or an issue. A lot of the clients that we work with work in quite contentious environments or high-risk environments. And so it might be that they're facing a particular problem, and I guess whenever anybody faces a particular problem like that, the instant reaction is to go into quick resolution mode. So usually what we'll do there is we'll just sort of take a moment and be much more considered about our approach and really think about, well, what is actually the long-term goal here? What do we really want to achieve here?
And how do people feel once they've been through that strategic process of working out where their direction needs to be and they've worked out what their key messages are and how they're going to deliver it? How do they feel when they deliver those communications?
Particularly with leaders when they're under pressure, if they're very much planned and they know exactly what the end goal is, then they always appear to be much calmer and much clearer. And I think simplicity is the key at the end of the day.
And how do you think those communications are received between the two, kind of reactive, going for the fear-based channel of communications or a kind of calm, strategic thought process behind it? How do you think your audience reacts differently to those two?
Everybody has what I like to call the magpie effect, where people are really attracted to the shiny. For clients that are really after that longevity, and for leaders that really do have to stand up and lead large numbers of people in difficult times, it's really, really important that they have that audience with them for that length of time, and you can only do that by being strategic, and you can only do that by being really, really planned about what you're saying and where you're going and what you're doing, because people will only stay with the shiny for a very short period of time.
In those kind of environments where it's risky and there's lots of data and it's high stakes, how important is it to keep your end audience in mind?
That's where it's absolutely critical. And again, that's where strategy and planning comes in. So you want to know from that very, very beginning moment what that end goal is, and that's how we would structure all of our messaging, is to make sure that it's always weaving that continuity and that consistency of language, so that that audience knows that when someone stands up and they're talking to whatever issue it might be, they already have a sense and an understanding of that journey that they're on.
In your career, you've seen the rise of digital communications and social media. Do you think this has changed storytelling and marketing?
we're obviously, with the rise of much more digital marketing and social media, we're obviously dealing with different expectations from an audience. So they're very much after, again, that instant gratification. If you can't get to the point in, the first 10 seconds, then really we're switched off, we're going elsewhere. But for us, I think the things that we've found are those real foundations that we weave into every story, and every message is still very much there. So still those foundations of simplicity and clarity, and making sure something is compelling really helps to get that cut through.
What stories are being told well by the types of people that you coach?
The stories that they're telling well are the ones where they actually get to show a little bit of themselves. For a lot of clients, that's often something that they don't get to do every day. But those stories where they're a little bit more off the cuff, a little bit more candid, I think have come across really, really well this year, particularly for leaders, those leaders who have had to stand up and say some really difficult things this year. I think the way they've been able to just show a little bit of themselves has actually been really important, and I've loved seeing some of those this year.
Do you think that will stay with us? Do you think we will allow our leaders to be a bit more human?
For us, with the clients that we coach, we find that it's very much they need to really be able to connect with an audience, and to do that in a virtual environment can be very, very challenging. But some of those skills around, showing a little bit of yourself and around just being really calm and composed have worked beautifully in this environment.
What stories do you think people are missing the opportunity to tell?
There's always a bit of a missed opportunity in terms of the fact that we're always so attracted to the big catastrophic stories. I think we miss those really, really lovely, fortunate opportunities and those fortunate stories to tell. And I think now is a time where we need to hear those more than ever. For leaders, I think having a really amazing story in your back pocket that you can pull out and tell at any time is a great connection piece. It's so important to really have something like that down pat that you feel really comfortable telling, and that shows a really sort of compassionate side to yourself. For organisations, I think amazing stories, what we really look for is that they open a conversation and that they keep people talking. And I think an amazing story can do that for a brand.